And it was invented by actually the university in Germany actually, and then it was actually really designed for organic apple growers to start with, and then it was trialed on all other things, and then it was actually so successful that we start to use it in everywhere. But it is, I would say it is mainly in Holland and Germany that use also on apples, but here in Australia I would have to say it's mainly on stone fruit. This is it. It is so simple as you can think of it, okay?
It is a machine. If someone drives it into something, it does break. When we first brought them out, they were 3 metre machines, which you can still get. But what we'll do is we're only doing half the tree at a time, so we're taking half the strings off. And without the strings on it, this pole hasn't got anything to push the branches away, and we hooked it onto the top of a tree and bent it over. So that's why we've gone back to a 2 metre machine that we lift up and down. It also comes with a drive system that can adjust this from about 100, well, you can get it down under 150, but the box comes out to 150 spins a minute, up to 500 spins a minute, so it can be fully adjusted to spin faster or slower to take more or less off. But apart from that, it's a pretty simple machine. I'll start it up. Just everyone's clear. When you very first hear it, the first time, it was probably about 2 hours I used it for in a cab, and then when I let someone take over for me, I couldn't believe actually what it sounded like when it was going through the trees. It is a very loud, noisy, like it sounds like it is doing damage, but as you'll be able to see from the trees that we've got, it's not actually doing anything to them. So that there's about 200 spins a minute. We generally spin at about 170, so a little bit slower than that. And yeah, it's all regulated itself, so it doesn't matter about your revs or anything like that. If you speed up, slow down, it all adjusts itself. So yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just like a big whip system. There's a lot of people that are using it on bars trees, and they're probably sitting on, more 4.5, 5, so that they can weave in and out of trees. But it's worked pretty well even on old conventional vase plantings. Like there's been like Andrew Routley and a few other people that have bought it that only have that, don't have any trellis at all. And there's no one. Everyone that I've rang, we sold 12 last year, have rang up and said that they've had. Like everyone's gone, yep, it's worth it, it's good. When we first bought it, we bought it just to do 3-row trials in each block, on each variety, and we left 9 rows out of about 100 acres. And now, like it was only just that Mick rang me up, I've left 1 bay of tops. Like apart from that, I don't have any controls. Like I don't need to leave controls anymore because they're just a pain in the butt, because that row that I left never made size. Because we wouldn't thin, like we'd thin and we'd send our thinners through and everyone's just going, oh, 1 here, 1 there. Once they got to that row, they just did the same thing. It's not like they stop and spend the 3 hours thinning it. So the first year we used it, on cannery stuff we didn't thin at all. But we do now, like really push the limits. We had to colour pick 3 or 4 times to try and get everything to make size and stuff like that, but we've been really happy with it, and I couldn't imagine trying to grow them without it now.
But probably one point we have to stress out is you have to learn and experiment a little bit yourself. When we started in full bloom, we started with probably try to make it ideal. We tried to make it 100% thinning to your numbers more or less, and then we over-thinned a little bit. And now we are saying we try to thin, but just 50% off, get that early blossom off, and then we stop, and the rest is hand thinning. And another little thing is also like, if you use the machine, of course this machine rip a little bit, the blossom comes off, and when you rip something off, then the tree starts to produce ethylene, and ethylene give a little bit of thinning as well. So you get a little bit of after thinning, okay? And there's also some blossoms hanging half off,
Yeah, I
falls
think it's
off
a lot
later.
of cells get broken.
Yes.
That are still sitting there, and you think that the numbers are there, and then they start shedding later on.
Yeah, and I have to say that in general it is like anything. When we trialed this machine, and I remember I had one very big grower in Swan Hill who did it, and we did a lot, and the owner said, oh, everything is thinned off and everything is ruined and the whole crop, and he didn't want the machine. It was probably the best year ever. But we picked really good size, and actually we picked 40-45 tons on those blocks with very good size, and that was markable fruit, okay, not cannery fruit, and it was actually a very good result. And we saved 45 grams on hand thinning. What I'd like you to do is actually show a little bit, and then we talk a little bit about fruit. And straight away you got leaves. And when you look in the tops here where it's not thinned, you see only flowers. You see that? And when you got flowers, that means actually the energy goes to the flowers, and when you don't have leaf development in the same time, you always lose size. You need those leaves to start to get active. And that's why when you see the hands out, you see that you want only 15% of the flowers what really is there. That's why we said you don't try to get to get it 100% accurate, but what you want is at least 50% of those blossoms off. And the only machine really what works is actually the Darwin thinning machine. At least you can see what you're doing. You can count blossoms and you can see what you are doing. But in the beginning when we started, Jason, you said this morning we want 110 pieces of fruit on those trees. You still have to do a little bit of hand thinning afterwards, okay?
50% of what you leave sets. So on the ones like, you know, a lateral 204 lateral has got about 30 flowers. Even where you don't thin, that's going to have 15 to 20 pieces of fruit on it. Like, so if you leave 5, you don't get 5. You might get 3. So, you know, you can't try and thin back to your flower numbers that you want as fruit, or else you will overdo it. You generally find that it takes all your tops off, like on the lateral, it'll leave your sides and your bottoms. But if you get a frost, these are the ones here that you don't lose. The ones that you lose are all your top ones. And because you've got all this leaf and they're all stronger, you don't lose the same percentage anyway. Because, well, I know we haven't had a frost since I've had this machine, but we hand flower thinned every year. And the year about 5 years ago when we had the frost, where we flower thin, was still as good as anybody else's. It's just that we paid $3,000 a hectare to hand flower thin it. This cost me about $100.
Just the timings, Marcel, again, just like for different varieties, is there a different timing to start, or?
It is actually 10% blossom, then we start already.
And is that just like peaches?
Yeah, I must say in general almost everything these
okay.
days, okay? But I prefer actually to go early. In the beginning was really full bloom, now it's probably 10-15% blossom in general. Still a little bit an argument with the plums actually. Some people like to do full bloom still.
I don't think with the plums it really makes too much difference because they're on a stem. So you're not trying to actually knock the blossom off. With here, if you look at something like this, once you've got, you know, and you try and run your finger on there yourself, it's hard to knock them off when there's actual flowers there. But when you've got just bloom, which we haven't got any, if you run your finger along, they just go and just fall off easy, and you're not getting any leaves in the way of your, you know, in the way of your strings. Where here, you still wouldn't do any fruit damage, but your string, like you'd be ripping off a lot of that leaf as well. So that's why I think it, you know, the leaf might hit there, so it's not actually doing a good job on the fruit. And when you start knocking leaf off, that's when you will start dropping fruit without touching it. Because, you know, the ethylene, when it produces here, it's just going to just shed fruit like ATS does when you burn off apples. But the first year when we got it, after the first year we went, wow, we can just prune really rough. Because we've got a thinner machine now and just knock them off. That was the biggest mistake we ever did, because without having your laterals spaced out nicely with a gap in between for the string to hit each one, you can't get in there. And, you know, that's why we've tried to turn our trees around so that from top to bottom they're identical, because the more consistent you can make your tree, the more consistent that machine will do the job.